Blessed day to you. We are now on the 10th chapter or the last lesson of our subject cognitive psychology. Here we will be talking on individual differences in cognition. Okay, so as we all know, everyone has their own differences in the way they behave, in the way they talk, in the way they walk. There may be differences that are too subtle for us to even notice, such as differences in cognition. This type of differences cannot be seen right away, but it could be processed or it can be seen as how individual interpret or how individual process such information in their minds. Okay? So far, we have been assuming that cognitive development proceeds in pretty much the same way for everyone. Or lahat ng processes ng cognitive rather, ay pare-pareho sa bawat tao. Oh, okay. Of course, no, makita natin na may similarities. May similarities yung patterns, may similarities kung how pinaprocess. Pero with that, or sticking to that, we would be ignoring what psychologists call as individual differences. So what is individual differences? Individual differences is a stable pattern of performance that differ qualitatively or quantitatively across individuals. Okay. So if I would ask you, how do you define individual differences? Or what is your idea regarding this topic? Okay, thank you. So the term individual difference is meant to capture the intuition that different people may approach the same task in different ways. Also, it can be applied in child psychology, wherein hindi lahat ng discipline ay pwede natin gamitin sa similar behavior ng isang bata. Pwedeng may dalawang bata lumaki sa parehong pamilya, pareho ang parents, pero iba pala yung approach na dapat ginagawa natin sa kanila. Pwede yung isang approach ay effective sa isa at yung isa ay hindi maging effective sa isa. Or similar behaviors, similar approach, different outcomes or outputs. So psychologists who study personality traits are among those most likely to be interested in individual differences. I would ask you, are you interested with individual differences? So the individual differences of interest to cognitive psychologists are generally of two distinct types. Individual differences in abilities or yung capacity na mag-carry out ng cognitive task at individual difference in style. Ito naman yung characteristic manner in which one approach cognitive tasks. Okay, so let's proceed to our topic outline. So here is our content synopsis. Ito yung mga key ideas na titignan natin later on sa ating slides. First, we have here the ability difference. Next, we have the cognitive styles. After that, we have the learning styles. Then we'll have the expert and novice differences, the effects of aging and cognition, gender differences in skills and abilities, gender differences in learning and cognitive styles. Okay, so just to inform you, so not everything that I will say is in this PowerPoint presentation or in this PDF. So I would like to advise you to have your notes with you so you could take on or take note rather some of the information that I will be discussing. Okay, let us focus again to the term individual differences. As I defined a while ago, it is the stable patterns of performance that differ qualitatively and or quantitatively among individuals. So we use the word performance here as a general term. So it could be something that is shown intentionally or that is shown unconsciously. So it is the response to what is happening to his or her environment, or it is how he responded, no, to everything that is around him or her. So it can be on qualitative aspect, no, or it can be on quantitative aspect. So it would be across individuals. So it could be differences in many things: interest, personality, wants, dislikes, likes, etc. Okay. So the term individual difference rather, is meant to capture intuition that different people may approach the same task in different ways. This is what I have said a while ago. So yun nga daw, ang mas interested daw dito sa topic na to is yung mga psychologists na nag-aaral regarding personality traits. Because if you would know, psychological tests regarding on personality is the widest array of psychological tests available at this moment. So, sobrang dami ng personality. If you would name some, or if you would identify most of the personality tests that we would know, some of the personalities can be divided into many facets. No, for example, one of the most famous personality test is the 16PF, wherein the personality traits is divided into 16 personality factors. No? So imagine, no, ang alam nating personality somewhat if you would ask a normal person or a individual without prior knowledge to this topic, possibly ang sasabihin nila is about introverted, extroverted. But it encompasses many things pa pala, and it encompasses many types of personalities pa. So that one is a proof that individual differences can be seen in many different aspects of an individual. So, isa lang yung personality. Let's proceed. Okay. Now we would look on what we call the ability differences. So, cognitive psychologists equate cognitive abilities with intelligence. So, what does it mean when we equate that? No? So, they regard these two topics or these two aspects as relevant to one another. So, according to Hunt nga of 1986, for example, intelligence daw is solely shorthand term for variation in competence on cognitive tasks and is statistically associated with personal variables. So, with that, no, tinitignan na yung intelligence daw can be attributed to these cognitive capacities or cognitive abilities. So, remember, if you could recall Gardner's multiple intelligence, so napakarami na nun. And they could be considered as cognitive capacities too, because all of the intelligences that we can find in Gardner's theory can be attributed right back to our cognitive processes. Okay? So there are many lively and ongoing debates over what the set of cognitive capacities are. So one representative list, so this is described by Horn, so follows. So note that the following list does not purport to represent totally independent skills or capacity. Pero most of the given here are considered as cognitive capacities. If you would attribute this to yourself, you can look into it, no? Tingnan nyo kung this could be applicable to you or you have this type of capacity, no? Or it is something that you need to improve. First, we have what we call the verbal comprehension. So, andito yung mga definition niya. Understand words, sentences, and paragraph. Siguro meron naman tayo niyan. Next is sensitivity to problem. So, suggest way to solve problems. So, next is syllogistic reasoning, which is naputol, no? So, drawing conclusion from premises. The fourth one is number facility. It computes arithmetic relations. So, these are not multiple intelligence na pasok na sinasabi ni Gardner. So, these are cognitive capacity. So, all of us have this, no? So, yung iba kailangan lang natin i-improve. Next is induction, indicate a principle of relation, no? Tingnan natin yung relationship between things. Next is general reasoning, no? Yung general na pagrarason. So, find solutions, pero this entails two algebraic problems. Next is associative memory. Recall associated elements, then give another element, no? So, for example, this food is related to Christmas, for example. And next, we have what we call the span memory. Immediately recall a set of elements from one presentation. Associational fluency, produce words similar in meaning to a given word. It could be a relevant term or synonym. So expressional fluency, produce different ways of saying the same thing. No? So spontaneous flexibility, produce diverse function and classification for an object. No? May isang object na binibigyan natin ibang function other than its main function. Perceptible speed, so for find instance of a pattern under speeded condition. Visualization, mentally manipulate forms to visualize how they would look. Spatial orientation, visually imagine parts of a place and put them in place. So, kasama dito yung, for example, nag-aayos kayo ng gamit sa bag ninyo at hindi siya magmumukhang bulky. So, length estimation, the last one, is estimate lengths or distance between points. So, lahat kayo nito ay meron, no? Pero it's something that one could need to improve, no? So, in order to enhance this, what we call capacities and abilities. Okay. So, ano bang point? Bakit ko ito pinapakita? So, the point here is, That people, so kasama na yung adults at children, can vary in many ways. Just as we vary in athletic prowess, no? Meron tayong mga kilalang athletic, yung iba merong musical inclination, may musical talent, yung iba may sense of humor, no? So too, we can vary in intellectual and cognitive ways. In terms of memory capacity, attention span, concentration, and so on, no? Meron nga tayong kilalang tao na mas maalalahanin, meron din tayong kilalang tao na mas makalilimutin, no? So these differences in turn can cause differences in how we approach and perform cognitive tasks. Yeah. So the point is, yun nga, people are varied. No? May pagkakaiba-iba tayo. So we have the same cognitive task pero iba-iba yung level ng cognitive task natin. We can have all the intelligences pero iba-iba rin yung strengths natin sa intelligence na yun. Ano ba yung mas malakas tayo? Ano ba yung kailangan natin ng improvement? Okay? So at this point, psychologists and educators have been debating fiercely regarding the issue of whether intelligence is one thing or several things. Ano nga ba ang intelligence? Is it one thing that can define the intelligence? Or it could be defined by many different things? So a controversial book aimed the general public, so which is called The Bell Curve, which steered a simmering pot of contention when it appeared. So making following strong assertion, among others. So here are 6 conclusions regarding test of cognitive ability drawn from classical tradition that is by now beyond significant technical dispute. Okay. So here are some of the assumptions nga, no? Regarding to test of cognitive ability. First, there is such thing as general factor of cognitive ability on which human beings differ. So meron daw tayong tinatawag na general factor which is the intelligence on cognitive ability on which human beings differ. It can be somewhat different. So lahat tayo ay may tinatawag na IQ. Pero lahat tayo ay may iba't ibang IQ. It could be IQ levels, no? It can be intelligence on different factors and other than that. But it is IQ. So number 2, all standardized tests of academic aptitude or achievement measures this general factor to some degree, but IQ express designed for that purpose measure it most accurately. Okay. So anong ibig sabihin nito? Marami tayong standardized test, no? Marami tayong ma-identify na intelligence test, mental ability test, no? Of academic aptitude or achievement test. Even yung mga examinations nyo ng midterm and final, they are considered psychological tests. They are considered academic aptitude test or achievement test, no? Where in some factor, no, it defines your grades, no? But IQ test express designed for that purpose measure is most accurately. Pero yung IQ test na standardized, no, ang purpose talaga niya ay specifically on your IQ, not what you have learned, not what you have remembered regarding the lesson, but solely on your IQ. So number 3, IQ scores match to a first degree whatever it is that people mean when they use the word intelligent or smart in ordinary language. So when we identify someone as intelligent or smart in the ordinary language, IQs would probably match, no? But always remember that your scores in your examinations, in your midterms and finals will not define you. Even your grades in your TOR, it will not define you. Also, it will not define what job you are getting in the future. No. So remember, no, you should study well, but don't be too constrained to the system wherein having high grades would be a standard to you at some point, no? Pero okay lang naman na maging standard yun, no? Mag-aral ng mabuti para may mataas na grades because somewhat in the future it could be an asset. But remember that your grades will not define you, no? It will not even define your IQ score. Okay? Also your personality, no? As much as myself, no, I would give myself as an example. Ako nga, tulad ng sinasabi ko sa mga previous nating previous kong maging estudyante, magulat kayo, nagtuturo ako ngayon, meron akong 2 license. I am not bragging, pero meron din akong bagsak sa aking TOR, no? Kung isipin, totoo, si Sir Ja, may bagsak. Oo, meron akong mga 5 sa TOR ko. Pero andito ako sa harap ninyo, nagtuturo, at somewhat, no, nakalusot naman ako sa uh, board exams at nagka-license ng dalawa. Okay. So, it is not something that you should be life's principle, no? Na okay lang magkabagsak, no? Kasi hindi naman okay magkabagsak talaga. Pero may reasons naman ako kung bakit ako nagkabagsak. Pero hindi ko na sabihin yung reasons ko, no? So, Yun lang. So if you would want a standard of high grades, then it's okay. Then it would be good. It could be an asset in the future. Pero remember that it will not define you. Okay. So IQ scores daw are stable, although not perfectly so, over much of a person's life. So when you reach the specific age, no? Kasi ang IQ test din, ang standardized IQ test ay may required age kung kailan ka pwedeng kumuha, no? Hindi siya pwedeng ibigay basta-basta lang sa bata dahil ibang IQ test ang para doon, no? Pero kapag ibibigay sa iyo yung IQ test at a specific age, no? It would probably be stable, although not perfectly as it has been said here, no? But over much of a person's life, no? But we will also consider yung other factors that could affect your IQ, no? For example, minimal stimulus, no? Wala nang ganong nangyayari, wala nang ganap, hindi na na-exercise ang iyong cognitive abilities, no? Or it could be somewhat affected by general medical conditions, psychological illnesses, no, accidents, no, that could affect your way of thinking or cognitive ability. So number 5, properly administered IQ tests are not demonstrably biased against social, economic, ethnic, and racial groups. What does that mean? Kapag properly mo na in-administer IQ test, it would not be biased and it would be what we call culture fair. So napakahalaga minsan na ang psychological test ay culture fair, especially kapag personality yan or intelligence. Because we all know na karamihan sa mga psychological test na meron tayo sa Pilipinas ay hindi ginawa sa Pilipinas. But we have what we call the norms, wherein ito yung pinagbabasihan natin para maging applicable siya sa ating culture. No? So it should be properly administered with the proper norms administered to the individual taking the exam para hindi maging bias, no? Para maging equal siya. For example, yun pala, yung intelligence natin dito na, for example, 70, no? Sa Africa ay, example lang to hindi to, ito yung nangyari. So, sa Africa, for example, yung 70 ay, ano sa kanila, very bright. For example lang. Or for example, yung 120 na intelligence dito, sa China ay, ano pa lang, normal lang na IQ yun, no? So, example lang yun. So, cognitive ability, pero hindi yun yung totoo, baka iniisip nyo ganun talaga, hindi yun. So, cognitive ability is sustainably heritable. Apparently, no less than 40% and no more than 80%. So, totoo nga ba na may factor daw yung cognitive ability, no? Sa na meron yung parents natin sa meron tayo ngayon? Actually, yes. No, it is heritable, no? Especially kapag cognitive ability, malaki ang factor na ito ay manggaling sa mother, usually. No? Pero yung other skills which can be considered as intelligences and other cognitive abilities, it could be inherited from your parents too. Or rather, you can inherit it from your parents too, no? Rather. So, no less than 40% and no more than 80%. Dahil meron pa rin tayong room for environmental factors, which is the nurture type. So, may nature, may nurture. Okay, let's proceed. So, ayun, tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, no? Cognitive ability is somewhat binibigyan ng relevance ng psychologists sa intelligence. So, do you still remember Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, wherein it captured the attention of enthusiasm of many psychologists and educators, some of who are trying to implement the previously described multiple intelligence theory in their class, no? And there exist proposals for multiple creativities as well as intelligences, and educators have adopted these ideas enthusiastically. Okay. So, however, Gardner's theory awaits the development of assessment tools for each intelligence. So, wala pa kasi tayong intelligence or psychological test rather, or intelligence test on multiple intelligence of Gardner, no? Wala tayong ganun na specific. But as you can identify, no, you have few of these multiple intelligence and kayo rin makaka-identify kung it is something that could be considered as your strength or it is something that you need to improve on. So, we have here the visual spatial, no? Verbal linguistic, logical mathematical, naturalist, body kinesthetic, musical or rhythmic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. So, saan ba dyan yung meron kayo? Can you still identify? Or saan dyan papasok yung multiple intelligence na meron kayo? Okay? Okay, now we would go to what we call the cognitive styles. So, looking back again to Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence, so ang pinapoint out nun ay yung idea na yung tao daw ay they may differ in their cognitive equipment. So this idea comports well with another long-standing idea that people differ not only on their abilities, capacities, and the efficiency which or with they use, but also in terms of their cognitive style. So ano ba yung cognitive style? It is their habitual and preferred means of approaching cognitive tasks. Okay? So the term cognitive style is meant to imply certain personality and motivational factors that influence the way approaches a cognitive task. So, iba-ibang cognitive style yan. For example, may binigay sa inyong project. Iba-iba yung approach ninyo. No? Ang cognitive style nyo ay motivated kayo na maaga nyo matapos para maipasa ka agad. Or, pwede ang cognitive style nyo naman ay uh, gagawin ko to kapag ilang days na lang malapit yung submission kasi motivation ko yung pressure. So, meron tayong mga ganun. No? So, iba-iba yung cognitive style natin. Okay. So, one of the example of cognitive style is what we call the field independence cognitive style. So it is a term coined by psychologists who study perceptual processing. So in this task, no, it will refer to several phenomena, one of which is that some people find it much easier than other people to identify parts of a figure as being separate from a whole. Okay. So yung field-independent individuals daw would have more difficult time finding the embedded picture in the larger picture. So they are less able perceptually to divorce the embedded picture from its context. For example, yun nga, find the 4 in the figure above. So siguro kayo, madali nyo makikita yung 4. No? Pero kapag ikaw ay field-independent individual na tinatawag natin, no? Medyo mas mahihirapan ka. Or field-dependent individual rather. So according to Witkins nga, and his associate, so they see this style of cognition as being related to issues broader than perception of figures. So according to the theory, this cognitive style daw refers to the degree to which the person relies primarily on internal or yung field independent or external, which is the field dependent reference in processing information from self in the surrounding field. Again, kapag ikaw ay field independent, nagre-rely ka primarily on the internal information, no? Pero kapag ikaw naman ay external or field dependent, no? Nagre-rely ka sa information outside. So, bakit mahihirapan dito yung mga individual na may field dependence rather? Kasi marami silang possible na mag-guess na baka ito yung 4, baka ito yung 4. For example, dito sa pictures na pinakita natin, may mga other possible 4 dito na makita. Pero yung pinaka 4 na hinahanap natin ay itong nandirito. Itong 4 na pababa, no? So hindi ako ang naglagay ng 4 na black, hindi ko siya isakto. Pero nag-gets nyo naman yan, yung 4 dyan kung nasaan. So may ibig sabihin pa pala yun, no? Kapag ikaw ay may field independence style or cognitive style, ikaw ay mas autonomous, no? Mas kaya mong magsarili sa iyong interpersonal relationship, no? So people who might be likely to form their own opinions regardless of what their friends of think, no? Kapag ito yung gusto ko, ito yung gusto ko. However, yung field dependent naman, ito naman yung mga tipo ng tao o individual na nakikita na madalas na nagre-rely sa iba. Especially kapag ambiguous yung situation. Saan tayo kakain? Kayo nang bahala. That is field dependence. So, para mas mapadali lang, kapag andun yung word na independence, no, mas autonomous ka as individual. Kapag ikaw ay dependent, no, usually malaki ang factor ng sinasabi ng iba or nagre-rely ka sa sinasabi din nila sa'yo. Okay? So, let's proceed. Ayan. Ito pala yung sinabi ko kanina. No? Para mas maintindihan natin, yung dun sa may part na may later, no? Kapag ikaw ay FI or field independent, autonomous ka sa iyong interpersonal relationship. Kapag ikaw naman ay FD, sa iyong cognitive style, no? Ikaw naman ay individual na mas nagre-rely sa iba, especially sa ambiguous situation. Now we would go on a second example of different type of cognitive style, which has been called the cognitive tempo, or the style of reflectivity impulsivity. So according to Kogan of 1983, it is defined as the style as the extent to which a child delays response during the course of searching for the correct alternative in a context of response uncertainty. So this can be illustrated with reference to the next figure that I will be showing you, which depicts an item from matching familiar figures developed by Kagan and his associates to assess cognitive tempo. So, iba si Kagan at si Kogan. O, nakita na ba kayo ng ganun, no? Sa cognitive tempo, yung hindi agad-agad nagre-response yung mga bata, meron silang delay, no? At para habang sinesearch nila yung correct alternative sa response nila na hindi pa sila sure. So, ito yung example natin na sinasabi ko. It is a matching familiar figures test, no? Okay. So, ano bang instruction nito? So, the task posed to respondents in MFFT to find the item that exactly matches the item shown on top. So, can you look? Or can you look at the image? So, which among the teddy bears here are the same as the teddy bear on the top? So, as you look on the 6 pictures, notice that each one is very similar to the top item. Thus, finding the exactly matching figures requires your careful attention. So children vary in how they respond to MMFT items. So, ano ulit yung MMFT? Matching familiar figure test. No? So some respond very quickly, others respond more slowly, some make very few errors even on difficult items, others make a number of errors even on easy items. So many children fall into one of the two categories daw. So those who respond rapidly and make many errors, so which demonstrate an impulsive style, and those who respond slowly and make relatively few errors, which demonstrate a reflective style. No? So I would ask you, sa tingin nyo saan ang kapareho ng bear dyan sa taas? Among dyan sa mga bear sa baba? Can you see it? Okay. So originally, cognitive style were thought of as a modifiable manner of problem-solving approaches. Recent researchers challenged this assumption wherein cognitive style does not appear to be easily modified through training. So cognitive style daw show developmental differences. So younger children are more likely to display impulsive and field-dependent styles, and older children rather tend to show more reflective and field-dependent style. So we have here the term what we called need for cognition. What is this need for cognition? So it is a recent area of attention among cognitive style researchers, which tells us about a person's motivation to take intellectual tasks and challenges. No? So it is the person's motivation daw to take intellectual tasks and challenges. It is an individual with a high cognition or need for cognition seem to enjoy more of those kinds of endeavors that involve thinking, problem solving, and reasoning, and to derive more satisfaction from accomplishing an intellectual challenge than do individuals with lower NFC. Have you encountered people like that, no? Mas gusto nila yung may challenge, no? Ayaw nila yung easy lang. Even yung mga games, ayaw nila sa easy, gusto nila hard agad. No? Or, for example, yung mga bata, mas gusto nila yung maraming stimulus or maraming gagawin. No? For example, yung nagbibuild ng Lego, nagbibuild ng blocks, mas gusto nila yan kaysa something na tumutunog-tunog lang or nagsasound. It is what we call the need for cognition. Also, people aim for this or have this, no? We have what we call the need for cognition, especially yung mga sapyo na individuals, no? They term to be more satisfied on intellectual talks and tasks rather than mundane tasks. Okay, so let's proceed. Now we go to what we call the learning styles. So learning style is the different approaches in learning tasks. So paano natin makikita yung different approaches sa learning tasks? Let us look on the study of Roloff of 1992. Okay, so Roloff gave a 35 field independent and 42 field dependent undergraduate a task which they listened to an audiotape lecture followed by a quiz, and then participated in an interactive demonstration followed by another quiz. So ang aim niya ay makita yung learning style ng bawat isa. Iniisip ni Rollock na yung first learning condition daw would favor yung field-independent learners, and that yung second would favor the field-dependent students. So, 2 quiz yan, no? Pareho niyang binigyan. Yung una, nakinig lang sa audio tape lecture tulad ng ganito, parang ganito, then followed by a quiz, and then participate. Yung pangalawa namang test ay interactive na teaching followed by another quiz. So, tinignan niya yung field-independent at saka field-dependent na individual. Though walang ganun naka-strong na evidence na napatunayan dun sa una, no, na yung field-independent daw ay mas lamang sa audio tape lecture kaysa sa field-dependent. Pero dun sa pangalawa, or dun sa field-dependent, no, maganda yung naging result ng quiz ng mga field-dependent sa lecture na may interactive demonstration. Okay. So, Rollock then got his conclusion. So, meron daw mga tao na may tinatawag na visual versus verbal learning, no? Although, again, with mixed results in supporting the idea of distinct styles. No? If I would ask you, are you more of a visual learner or are you more of a verbal learner? Or paano ba kayo nagle-learn, no? More on visual kayo, may binabasa, nakikita, or more on mas okay sa inyo yung verbal learning, no? Or naririnig nyo yung nakikita ninyo. So the general idea here is that learners learn best when the mode of information presentation best suits their own individual learning style. So may kanya-kanya tayong learning style. Even kayo, no? Meron kayong what we call more on preference sa inyong learning style. Ano ba yung mas comfortable kayo? Or ano ba yung mas okay para sa inyo? Mas okay ba kayo na binabasa nyo lang? Or mas okay kayo na mayroong lecture kayong naririnig at may nagdi-discuss sa inyo? Yun. That is also considered as an individual difference. Okay. Now we would be talking on expert versus novice differences. We first encountered this topic in chapter 2 when we discussed perceptual learning. If you recall, the point was made there that experts and novices, given equal exposure to information, acquire or pick up on different amounts of it. In general, experts will perceive more distinction daw, especially subtle ones, than novices do. So this is an example. So this point is illustrated by an example of an art historian and a layperson. So may isang art historian daw at saka may isang layperson or a person from a church which is unfamiliar with art, both standing before a Picasso painting. So nasa harapan sila ng Picasso painting. So yung layperson, which is a novice, sees less information than the art historian, which is an expert, who may be effortlessly picking up information about brush strokes or composition that the novice simply cannot perceive. So may expertise din yan. So it can be applied in many aspects of our cognition naman, no? If we are expert in such thing, mas madali nating ma-identify yung mali, no? For example, expert tayo sa pagluluto, no? And kapag may napansin tayong may mali na ingredient, no, alam natin yun. Unlike kapag novice, no? Kapag hindi naman natin sure or wala tayong alam gaano sa pagluluto, for example, nung putahe, hindi natin alam kung ano yung mali. Hindi natin agad ma-identify di tulad ng isang expert. Kayo ba? Nagluluto ba kayo? Napapansin niyo ba yung differences ng luto ninyo kapag may natitikman kayong luto ng iba with a similar recipe? Okay, let's proceed. Ayan. So, the findings on expert novice differences just described sound a common theme. So, your level of knowledge in a domain affects your cognition, so with that domain. So, many cognitive processes, including perception and recognition, encoding, classification, and categorization, and problem-solving, reasoning, and decision, making about information with domain of expertise appear affected. So kapag kayo ay may expertise sa specific domain, no, maapektuhan yung way nyo ng pagpa-perceive or pagpa-process nitong mga cognitive processes in your daily life or application. No? So kung kayo ay magaling sa pagpa-problem solve, no, mas madali nyo ma-problem solve yung mga bagay-bagay unlike a novice which is not used to problem solving. You could reason out, you can make efficient or right decision, no? And other things. Okay, now we would go on the effects of aging in cognition. Ano nga ba ang effect ng aging sa cognition? Actually, we all know that old age comes with its cost, no? So even yung mga illnesses, no? Merong mga illnesses na hindi apparent or hindi madaling nakikita sa mga younger people, pero eventually lumalabas sila sa mga older person or mas nakikita natin or observable, prevalent rather, sa older individuals. So cognitive skills and abilities develop, which means that children of different ages and levels of development may approach the same cognitive task in different ways. So age-related changes in cognitive processing do not cease during adolescence. In fact, researchers looking at adult developmental development and aging have found a number of differences in cognitive processing between younger and older adults. So, meron talagang differences, no? Napakaraming differences. Siguro ma-attribute din natin dito yung regarding sa novice and expert. No, kapag ikaw ay bata, novice ka pa sa ganitong cognitive process. No? And later on, kapag ikaw ay expert na, marami ka ng knowledge regarding this topic or regarding some matters, no? Mas madali na, no? Or mas ease na yung way ng pagka-process ng yung cognition. Relative to younger adults or those in their 20s and 30s, older adults in their 60s and older show several differences in cognitive abilities and skills. For example, older adults daw perform less well on tasks of divided attention. So, show age-related decrements in speech recognition and speech discrimination too. Pagsasalita, no? Meron na ring impact or factor na impact rather yung age, and shows decline in memory performance on variety of memory tasks. And it will go hand in hand on different degenerative illnesses of aging, such as Alzheimer's, dementia, and the like. So, according to Balz, Staudinger, and Linderberger, so in a review of literature, he concluded that a general decline in the speed of processing of elementary cognition operations occurs with age. So, given fact na to, no? No, na talaga nagkakaroon ng decline sa speed ng pagpaprocess. It comes siguro on the biological aspect din, wherein mas mabilis na yung necrosis ng neurons, no? At mas mabilis na ring maubos yung mga cells na responsible para sa healthy na pagka-transfer ng information. That's why there is a decline in the speed. It's important to keep in mind, however, that differences in cognitive processing as function of aging are still subject to individual differences from other sources. So, pwede rin namang hindi. No? May kilala tayo na may edad na, pero yung intelligence nila okay na okay pa. Yung skills nila, yung cognitive task, no? For example, Wang Od. No? Kilala niyo ba yan? Si Apo Wang Od. No? Isa siya sa pinaka kilalang mantatatak, no? Or magtatatu with the older ways of imprinting into human skin, no? But still, okay na okay pa rin yung kanyang way at marami pa rin nagpapagawa sa kanya because of her expertise on it. So such factors as intelligence, health, years of formal education, expertise, and cognitive style all continue to play important roles, even at old age. No? So age, ability, expertise, and stylistic differences among people can affect their efficiency in acquiring or processing information, leading to differences in how much information is picked up or how thoroughly it is processed. These differences, in turn, could have a great effects on how well a complicated cognitive task is performed. Considering all these factors, no? So, lahat yan may factor, hindi lang yung age, ability, expertise, at saka stylistic difference. Okay. Do you know someone or do you know any individual, a relative, grandfather, grandmother, no, that is already at their old age but still performing well? No? Can you tell me some if you could name them and identify what their specific tasks that is a little bit different from the people of their age? Okay. Now we would look on the gender differences in cognition. We all know that different genders could have differences in the way we cognize on things. Boys and girls adapt different approaches to cognitive tasks, but this could be attributed to many factors, especially the environment. So may factor tied to sa nature na boys are usually like this instinctively, Girls are usually like this instinctively, but we could not or we will not disregard yung many factors na nagko-contribute dito externally. Cognitive gender differences might occur not on very specific tasks but rather on broad approaches to cognition itself. Future work must establish how different the ways of knowing are for people of different genders and must investigate how these differences in approach might translate into performance on a specific cognitive task. For example, though I do not want this stereotype, pero marami akong kilala, though it is not negative siguro in a way, pero marami akong kilala na they belong in LGBT community, gay or bisexuals na talagang nag-excel sila sa aesthetic value ng decorations, designs, at saka yung festive way, no? Ang dami kong kilala na very artistic, no? Maraming talent. They can be considered as assets with their specific cognitive skills, no? For example, ako personally, napakababa ko sa creativity. Hindi ako ganun ka galing sa creativity, sa pagde-design. Though may knowledge ako on arts, pero hindi ako ganun ka-expert on that matter, no? So, and amazingly, I have observed some of the students, no, I have observed some of my friends na talagang napakagaling nila on this specific cognitive task. Ang galing mag-design, no? Yung tipong assignment lang, pero kapag magpasa sila or mag-submit sila, pang project na, no? Yung mga ganun ba, no? So, it could be different in different genders, no? So, it could be also different in the way they approach things. So hindi ko naman ni-stereotype or kapag babae ganito, kapag lalaki ganito, kapag gay ganito. Pero somewhat, na-observe ko on a general population na ang dami ko nakikitang friends na artistic on the LGBT community, no? So, it will also be important to assess the effect of gender independent of other demographic variables such as, ito yung sinasabi ko, may other factors pa. Socioeconomic status, no? Kung may means naman sila, for example, you are very creative, you are very good at arts, pero kung wala kang means, no, hindi yun something na ma-develop mo. The level of education, no, expertise, ma-attribute natin, and cultural heritage, may factor yung culture, no? So, yung cognitive process, may factor everything around you. That would be all. And I hope that you have your take home and all of the lessons in the cognitive psychology. So this will be our last lesson. And thank you for having me here. God bless.